officer Howie Liebengood, who died by suicide. His death was a direct result of the trauma and strain from the January 6th attack. Madam Speaker, in the statement, the family of Officer Liebengood states, and I quote, "We believe a thorough, nonpartisan investigation into the root causes of and the response to the January 6th riot is essential for our nation to move forward." Howie's death was an immediate outgrowth of those events. And I ask unanimous consent that this be part of the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, this time I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's hardly anything this Congress can do that will be more important than having a bipartisan commission to look at the insurrection that occurred in this Capitol on January the 6th. There was an attempt to overturn our Constitution, to displace the Electoral College and the peaceful transition of power that makes our country unique and special among the countries of the world. This wouldn't have happened but for the president at the time telling people to come to Washington on January 6th. No other date but the date of the Electoral College, to fight like hell or you won't have a government anymore, and telling him he would walk with them to the Capitol and told them where to go. This cannot happen again. If we don't have this commission and reveal the truth, it will happen again. There's only one reason you wouldn't vote for this. If you can't handle the truth, get the truth out. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of the time. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Madam Speaker, I continue to reserve my
Gentleman
time.
continues to reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a May 19th letter from the Bipartisan Policy Center in support of H.R. 3233, the National Commission to Investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol Complex Act. In the letter, the co-chairs of the 9/11 Commission, Governor Tom Kean and Representative Lee Hamilton, state, and I quote, "A full accounting of the events of January 6th and the identification of measures to strengthen the Congress can help our country heal," end quote. And at this point, I yield
Without objection, so ordered.
I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Mississippi, the distinguished chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security, Mr. Thompson.
Gentleman from Mississippi, distinguished chairman, is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I rise in support of H.Res. 409, which allows for debate on H.R. 3233, the National Commission to Investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol Complex Act. After months of negotiations last week, I was pleased to introduce this measure with the gentleman from New York, Mr. Katko. Back to 2007, I was proud to be the lead sponsor of legislation to implement the unfulfilled recommendations of the 9/11 Commission. I can say with certainty at that time, I could never have imagined that I would be standing here today, almost 15 years later, advocating for the establishment of a 9/11-style commission to investigate a violent domestic attack on the United States Capitol. On January 6th, the world watched Americans storm the Capitol and engage in violence to try to intimidate and prevent Congress from carrying out its constitutional duty to certify the presidential election, a solemn process central to the peaceful transfer of power in our democracy. Like the 9/11 terrorist attack, the events of January 6th have cast a long shadow on our country. Like the 9/11 terrorist attack, it's raised fundamental questions about information sharing, coordination, preparedness, and response at all levels of government. When the defenses around the citadel of our democracy fail, as profoundly as they did on January 6th, attention must be paid. At least one Capitol police officer died because of the violence that day. Others died too, and injuries were extensive also, not the least the body blow of America's confidence that the reforms undertaken after 9/11 would deliver better information sharing and coordination to keep us secure. H.R. 3233 authorizes the establishment of a 10-member commission that mirrors the 9/11 Commission, the gold standard for bipartisan commissions. The January 6th Commission would be required to investigate and report on all facts and causes of the attacks, including relevant influencing factors that may contribute to the attack. Given how politically charged the events of January 6th have become, we need to come together in a patriotic, bipartisan way and approve this independent body just as we did when we approved the creation of the 9/11 Commission. The 9/11 Commission acted not out of partisanship, but out of patriotism. We need that same sense of duty today. Apathy is not a security strategy, and neither are ignorance and willful disregard. After such a shocking attack, nothing short of a full accounting of what took place would put us on a path to improving our homeland security. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. His gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized for such time as he may consume.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my good friend, the distinguished chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, for his excellent work on this bill. And I want to thank his ranking member and negotiating partner. I think they frankly moved us in the right direction toward agreement. We continue to have concerns, but it's a long legislative process. Obviously, we'll have to pass something through the Senate as well. So it's my hope we can build upon their work and continue to move forward. We're not prepared at this time to provide, huge support for this bill. We think it can continue to improve, but that doesn't take anything away from my appreciation and admiration for the gentleman from Mississippi for his good work, and we'll continue to try and work with him and others and get to a place where we can all come to agree. And with that, Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
So, Madam Speaker, I would, let's be clear that opposition to this commission is not about substance or policy. It really is about politics, plain and simple. At least my Republican colleagues on the Senate side are willing to admit that. Senator Thune said that there's concern among Republicans that the findings could be, quote, weaponized politically and drug into next year, end quote. I get that his members want to, quote, be moving forward and not looking backward, but this was an attack on the United States Capitol and all the people who work here, and it was an attack on our democracy. And I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a CNN article entitled "Republicans Fear January 6 Probe Could Undercut 2022 Midterm Messages."
Without objection, so ordered.
At this point, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pascrell.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today in support of truth and justice. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, two honorable men, you all oversee this. I'm happy about that. That attack was born of lies. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the worst external terrorist attack in our modern history. The gravest attack ever on American democracy came 133 days ago. That attack was born of lies. It was born about the voting, about elections, about our democracy. These lies divided our country. They spread across our land like a plague. On December 11th, I warned on this floor of elected officials across this nation amplifying big lies. On January 6th, the world saw the result. Like the 9/11 Commission, it is modeled after. This commission must hold allegiance only to the truth. A full investigation in this attack must reflect on how the spark of resurrection and insurrection was ignited and who fanned the flames. It was our sacred duty,
Gentleman's time has expired.
Speaker, and I thank you and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I reserve my
Gentleman
time.
reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Espiat.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the rule and underlying bills. January 6 was an unprecedented event that exposed a real threat to the beating heart of our democracy, our capital, and all of us who work in it. Shortly after the insurrection, I expressed the need to form a 9/11-style commission, not only to get to the bottom of this and who was responsible for it, but also to ensure that it never happens again. This is exactly what these bills do, Madam Speaker. The security of our capital and our democracy is not a partisan issue. However, the other side of the aisle has attempted to turn this into a sideshow, Madam Speaker, into a circus. I submit to you that the attempted murder of our Vice President, that the attempted murder of our Speaker, the attempted murder of any one of us is not a sideshow, is not a circus, is a real threat to everyone across this great land. Taken together, these two critical bills will help us finally recover from the January 16 insurrection. We must ensure that these sacred halls will never again be overrun by racist thugs against our democracy. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Time has expired. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I reserve my time.
Gentleman continues to reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline.
Gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the rule and the establishment of a national commission to study the events of January 6, 2021. The January 6th insurrection was a violent and bloody attack on our democracy. Domestic terrorists stormed this building. They did so in order to stop the peaceful transition of power to keep Donald Trump in office even after he lost the 2020 election fair and square. We've never seen this type of attack before in this country. I pray we never will again. But that's why we need to establish a national commission to understand how this happened, to gather all the facts surrounding these events, and most importantly, to ensure that it never happens again. I want to thank Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Katko for working across the aisle to establish this bipartisan commission. The people who took part in this insurrection caused great damage to this building. Dozens of people were injured and 5 people lost their lives. But despite the horror of that day, our democracy endured. And this commission will allow us to understand how this happened and how we prevented and gather all the facts. The search for truth matters. Protecting our democracy matters. This should be a bipartisan vote to strongly support the work of this commission. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Madam Speaker, I continue to reserve my
Gentleman
time.
continues to reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I'm having trouble trying to figure out exactly what the problem that some of my Republican colleagues may have with this bill, and maybe based on the lack of speakers, they're having trouble figuring it out too. I'd like to yield 2.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania, the distinguished member of the Rules Committee, Ms. Scanlon.
Thank you, Chairman McGovern. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of the rule and underlying bills before us today. It's been over 4 months since the attack on the Capitol, an attack which disrupted a joint session of Congress and threatened one of the most essential pillars of our American government, the peaceful and democratic transfer of power. That lawless assault threatened not just the foundations of our government, but also the lives of those who serve their fellow citizens here. That assault shattered the illusion of security and sanctity of this building, the United States Capitol. We remain eternally grateful for the bravery and patriotism of the members of the U.S. Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police who heroically defended this building, its occupants, and our democracy. But it is long past time to launch an independent, bipartisan examination of what occurred on January 6, why it occurred, and how to prevent it from ever happening again. We need a commission with the power and authority to collect evidence and make recommendations across multiple agencies, committees, and branches of government impacted by the attack. Almost as soon as the tear gas and broken glass had been cleared in the wee hours of January 7th, we began hearing calls for unity. But what has remained elusive is a shared set of facts behind which the nation can unify and forge a path to healing and accountability for the events of January 6th. That path starts with these bills. We cannot repair the damage to our government and the rule of law so long as we have national leaders, or those who seek to be, propagating lies about why our government was attacked and the gravity of the events of January 6th. Those falsehoods are incredibly dangerous, and so long as they remain unchallenged by a bipartisan, independent commission, we are never going to get past the dark part of our history. In addition to creating this bipartisan commission, we also need to pass the emergency supplemental appropriations bill to fund the many additional expenses which were created by the Capitol attack, including overtime, staffing, training for law enforcement, reimbursing the National Guard, and so much more. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote for this rule. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman very much. I was here on 9/11, and I could see the billowing smoke as we ran for our lives, as the planes were hitting the Pentagon, the aftermath. I was here on 1/6 when screaming voices came and glass began to break, as the video has shown us, and the video of beating and beating and beating. My tribute to all of the officers. We've heard the story of Officer Fanone. All we want is truth, and all we want is for the big lie to be undone. It is important to support H.R. 3233, the National Commission to investigate the January 6th and the underlying emergency supplemental that General Honore and his committee so aptly did. Thank you to Chairman Thompson and Katko. Be reminded of the fact that it was the former president still lingering, lashing around, instead of allowing the transfer of peaceful government to go. He is now pushing big lies. I want the vice president to live. I wanted the speaker to live. I wanted members to live. I wanted black officers not to be under the threat of racist overtones. And so this commission will listen to it all. I ask my colleagues, get rid of the big lie, stand on the Constitution and the flag, justice and equality for all, pass H.R. 3233, the National Commission to investigate the January 6th. I yield back.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I continue to reserve my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we have some speakers on the way.
We'll just. Would the gentleman like to
How
reserve?
much, may I inquire how much time we have remaining on both sides?
That'll take a few months for us to figure out. I'll be right back.
Okay.
The gentleman from Massachusetts has 6.5 minutes, and if you give me a moment, I'll report on the gentleman from Oklahoma. 17.5 minutes for the gentleman from Oklahoma.
I just say to the gentleman, I'm happy to reserve if he wants to use some of his time.
I continue to reserve.
The gentleman continues to reserve.
Wait, let me Mr. Speaker, let me,
Recognized.
is he here? Oh, yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask, I encourage all members here today to read today's Washington Post editorial questioning Leader McCarthy's political courage in opposing this bill and calling for him to testify under oath about his eyewitness experience of the violence and former President Trump's apparent indifference to it. The editorial also criticizes his false equivalence of Black Lives Matter protests to the Capitol invasion and his minimization of the insurrection's significance, which only encourages the lies on which it is based. And I would like to ask unanimous consent to insert that into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
At this time, Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, a distinguished member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Raskin.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Chairman, the January 6th insurrection against our Congress, our Constitution, and our election was one of the worst political crimes in American history. It interrupted the peaceful transfer of power. It injured and wounded, hospitalized more than 140 law enforcement officials who were punched, kicked, maced, spat upon, speared by Confederate battle flags, Donald Trump flags, American flags. They had eyes gouged. One lost several fingers. They turned the Capitol of the United States, they turned this chamber into a crime scene. The independent January 6th Commission legislation brought forth by Chairman Thompson, a Democrat, and Congressman Katko, a Republican, is bipartisan in composition. 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats. Equal subpoena power. It is nonpartisan in design and in function. Its whole purpose is to determine the events and the causes of those events on January 6th so we can prepare effectively to stop it from ever happening again to the people of America. The key precedents, the 9/11 Commission, which was critical for mobilizing public attention to the dangers of al-Qaeda and other foreign terror networks and helping us to rectify inadequacies in our security infrastructure and to prepare to defend our democracy. Today, the #1 security threat facing the American people is domestic violent extremism, and we saw what domestic violent extremism can do when it broke into our house on January 6th. According to Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas, domestic violent extremism poses the most lethal and persistent terrorism-related threat to our country today. Abraham Lincoln made a beautiful speech that I recommend to all of my colleagues before they vote on this legislation today, the Lyceum Address, where he said, all of the armies of Europe, all of the armies of Africa and Asia could never conquer American democracy. But if there is a mortal threat to us, it will come from within, from dissension within and threats to the constitutional order from within. So we must pay attention to what happened on January 6th, and we must honor those brave men and women who fought for hours against medieval-style waves of violence raining down upon them on that day, and we must do honor to future generations of Americans to find out exactly what happened and why and how to stop it in the future. Let's pass this legislation today. I thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I continue to reserve.
Gentleman continues to reserve. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I think we're ready to close. We'll let the gentleman use up his 17 minutes to close.
I'm certainly prepared to close whenever my friend would like.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves.
Madam Speaker, I yield
Gentleman from
myself the
Oklahoma
balance
is
of my time.
recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in closing, I oppose the rule. Majority is proposing two significant pieces of legislation today. Unfortunately, concerns remain with both of them. H.R. 3237, the supplemental appropriations package intended to provide funds for the security of the Capitol complex, is unfortunately and unnecessarily a partisan bill. It was the subject of bipartisan negotiations, and there's no reason we could not have gotten to a bipartisan result had the majority wanted to do so. Instead, we're left with a partisan package that does not meet the needs of the institution and, frankly, has no chance of becoming law in its current form. I would urge my friends particularly to look at the section relating to the Rapid Response Force. That's something where I think, honestly, a little bit more reflection, we could find some common ground. I think it's a mistake to put a force like that under the control of either the District of Columbia or the executive branch. I think we need direct control of that ourselves. I know some of my colleagues on the other side feel strongly that way too. Simply makes sense. If we're having a crisis here, we ought to make the decision if we need an extra force. And I think if we keep working at it, we're going to find some common ground there. And I hope that we do. H.R. 3233 establishes a commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the Capitol complex. And here, too, I want to acknowledge that real progress was made in the course of negotiations. And I want to commend particularly Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Katko for having brought us closer to agreement. However, on our side, many of us continue to have reservations about this bill and the parameters of the commission itself. After all, the events of January 6th did not occur in a vacuum. If we truly hope to find answers for the American people, then we must take into account everything, all of the other political violence that's taken place in recent years. And I would just ask my friends go back, and I know they have, and look at the 9/11 Commission, which did exactly that. It didn't just look at 9/11. It looked at the attack on the USS Cole. It went back to the attack on the African embassies that we experienced. So there's room here, I think, for context and additional discussion. We also have concerns structurally with some of the staffing provisions, other items that I've mentioned that we hopefully would look. So we would like to continue to work on that. I think we could have made good progress had any of the amendments that were offered in the Rules Committee been made in order. My friends chose not to do that. That's their privilege to do so, but I think it probably obstructed what could have been a larger bipartisan vote for this particular piece of legislation. But again, we'll see going forward. What we do here isn't the final arbiter. This is one stage in the process. The United States Senate is the next stop. Hopefully there'll be some changes made there. Then it would have to come back here. So we should look on both of these matters as stops in a journey or parts of a journey, not as the final decision on any of them. So with that, Madam Speaker, I want to urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question, no on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the remaining time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts yields himself the remaining time. He's recognized.
Madam Speaker, I am deeply disappointed that any of my Republican colleagues would oppose the creation of this commission. You know, there's a lot of talk all the time about the need for bipartisanship, and that's what we have here. This is true bipartisanship. The distinguished minority leader sent a letter to Speaker Pelosi asking for an equal 5-5 ratio in apportionment and appointments by Democrats and Republicans on this commission. He got it. He asked for co-equal subpoena power. He got it. He asked for no inclusion of findings or other predetermined conclusions which ultimately should be rendered by the commission itself. He got it. Now, maybe he didn't think he would, but Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Katko, who was appointed by the minority leader to negotiate on behalf of the Republicans, came to a deal, a genuinely bipartisan deal, to look into the horrific acts of what happened in this chamber on January 6th. I was here that day. They were not ordinary tourists who came in here. My colleagues on the Republican side were here today. There are pictures of them helping to barricade the doors. They know exactly what happened on January 6th. Those people who attacked the Capitol, were not here to make a political point. They were here to desecrate this building and hurt people. And look, we as members of Congress, we sign up for this job. But I want you to vote for this commission, not because of us, but because of the people who work here, our staff, the support staff, the Capitol Police, the people who work in our cafeterias, who maintain this building. They were traumatized by what happened here today. And our response to all of this is, well, let's move on. Let's not do this. In spite of a truly bipartisan negotiation and a bipartisan commission. This is so disappointing. I mean, don't talk to us about bipartisanship, and then when you get it, turn your back on it. Madam Speaker, I'm sick and tired of those who want to hover around mistruths and lies and spread conspiracy theories. What happened 133 days ago can never be normalized. We all have to speak the truth. And we must act to prevent it from ever happening again. And that starts with not only passing this rule, but passing this bipartisan bill to establish a bipartisan commission to produce a report for the American people. And so we know clearly and credibly as to what happened, and then we can take additional actions to make sure it never happens again. As I said in my opening, vote for this out of respect for this institution, out of respect for our democracy, out of respect for the truth, out of respect for the people who work for you, who come here every day and work for you. We owe it to them and to this country to move forward. Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
Gentleman yields back, moves the previous question. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The previous question.
On that, I would request the ayes and nays.
Gentlemen, pursuant to Section 3S of the House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is a vote on adoption of House Resolution 275, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 275, resolution condemning the horrific shootings in Atlanta, Georgia on March 16, 2021, and reaffirming the House of Representatives' commitment to combating hate, bigotry, and violence against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community.
The question is on adoption of the resolution. Members will record their vote by electronic device. For what purposes does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
As the member designated by Mr. Rupersberger of Maryland pursuant to House Resolution 8, I rise to inform the House that Mr. Rupersberger votes aye on H.R. 275.
What purposes does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Crenshaw of Texas pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Crenshaw will vote no on H.Res. 275.
I know that wasn't fun.
For what purposes, the gentleman from New York rise?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on H-Res 275.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Illinois rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Rush pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on H-Res 275.
From Illinois rise.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Grijalva pursuant to H-Res 8, I hereby inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote yes on H-Res 275.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
As a member designated by Representative Cardenas, pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Representative Cardenas will vote aye on H.R. 275.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Maxine Waters pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Ms. Maxine Waters will vote yes on H-Res 275.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Wilson, pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on H-Res 275. And as the member designated by Mr. Courtney, pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Courtney will vote yes on H-Res 275.
Purposes does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Mullen of Oklahoma pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Mullen will vote nay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Woman from Michigan, rise.
As the member designated by Ms. Joyce Beatty pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Ms. Joyce Beatty will vote yes on HRES 275.
Purposes, gentleman from California, rise.
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Napolitano pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on H.R. 275.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Slotkin pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Ms. Slotkin will vote yes on HRES 275.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Sewell pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Ms. Sewell will vote yes on HRES 275.
Deanna Rise.
Designated by Mr. McHenry of North Carolina pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. McHenry will vote no on H.Res. 275.
From Pennsylvania Rise.
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Lawson of Florida, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lawson will vote yes on the House Resolution 275. Thank you.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Missouri rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Cortez will vote yes on H-Res 275.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on H-Res 275.
What purposes does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Liu pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Liu will vote yes on H-Res 275. As the member designated by Mr. Lowenthal pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on H-Res 275.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Florida rise?
As the member designated by Mr. Buchanan of Florida pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Buchanan will vote nay on House Resolution 275.
Does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Kirkpatrick pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Kirkpatrick will vote yes on H-Res 275.
For what purposes does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Purposes does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Donald Payne pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Payne will vote yes on H-Res 275.
What purposes does the gentleman from California rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
What purposes does the gentlewoman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on H-Res 275. And as the member designated by Mr. Allred pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Allred will vote yes on H-Res 275.
Purposes does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, I'm mistaken on the previous announcement. As the member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote no on the previous question on H-Res 275.
The gentleman from South Carolina rise.
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Wilson of South Carolina pursuant to HRS 8, I inform the House that Mr. Wilson will vote nay on HRS 275.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Young from the great state of Alaska, pursuant to HRes 8, I inform the House that Mr. Young will vote yea on HRes 275.
On this vote, the yeas are 244, the nays are 180. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is a vote on passage of H.R. 1629, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1629,
a bill to amend the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act with respect to limitations on exclusive approval or licensure of orphan drugs and for other purposes.
The question is on the passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Purposes, the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Wilson of South Carolina, pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Wilson will vote yea on H.R. 1629.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Maxine Waters pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Ms. Maxine Waters will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purposes does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Napolitano, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
Purposes does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Kirkpatrick, pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Kirkpatrick will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Young of the great state of Alaska, pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Young will vote yea on H.R. 1629. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McEachin to H.Res. 8, I would inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on H.R. 1629. And as the member designated by Mr. Allred pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Allred will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. McHenry of North Carolina, pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. McHenry will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Sewell pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Sewell will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Mullen of Oklahoma pursuant to House Resolution 8, I affirm to the House that Mr. Mullen will vote yea on H.R. 1629. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Missouri seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Cortez will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Buchanan of Florida pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Buchanan will vote yes on 1629.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
As a member designated by Ms. Joyce Beatty pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Joyce Beatty will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Donald Payne pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Payne will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Slotkin pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Slotkin will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Lowenthal pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on H.R. 1629. As a member designated by Mr. Liu pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Mr. Liu will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Rupersberger, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House Mr. Rupersberger will vote aye on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
As a member designated, Mr. Speaker, by Mr. Lawson of Florida, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lawson votes yes on H.R. 1692.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on H.R. 1629.
Woman from Connecticut seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Wilson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on H.R. 1629. And as the member designated by Mr. Courtney pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Courtney will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Grijalva pursuant to H.Res. 8, I hereby inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Crenshaw of Texas pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Crenshaw will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As a member designated by Representative Cardenas pursuant to H.R. 8, inform the House Representative Cardenas will vote aye on H.R. 1629.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Rush pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on H.R. 1629.
On this vote, the yeas are 400 and the nays are 20.
Mr. Schrader. Mr. Schrader votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 402, the nays are 23. The bill is passed without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 409, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number 18, House Resolution 409, Resolution providing for consideration of the bill, H.R. 3233, to establish the National Commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol Complex and for other purposes, and providing for consideration of the bill, H.R. 3237, making emergency supplemental appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021, and for other purposes.
The question is on the order of the previous question. On the resolution, members will record their vote by electronic device. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona pursuant to H.Res. 8, I hereby inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote aye on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote no on the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
You're fine.
Mr. Crenshaw will vote no on the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Rush pursuant to H.Res. 8, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Napolitano pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Buchanan of Florida pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Buchanan will vote no on House Resolution 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Al Lawson of Florida, pursuant to House Resolution, I inform the House that Mr. Lawson will vote yes on this resolution. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As the member designated by Representative Cardenas pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Representative Cardenas will vote aye on ordering the previous question.
Gentleman from Ohio seek recognition.
Why, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Young from Alaska, pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Young will vote nay on the previous question.
Does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Wilson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on ordering the previous question. And as the member designated by Mr. Courtney pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Courtney will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Slotkin pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Slotkin will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
Seek recognition.
Designated by Mr. Rupersberger of Maryland, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I rise to inform the House that Mr. Rupersberger will vote aye on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
As a member designated by Ms. Joyce Beatty pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Beatty will be voting yes on ordering the previous question.
Huh? I know, I'm ready, I'm ready. Indiana. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. McHenry of North Carolina pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. McHenry will vote no on the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Sewell pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Sewell will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Kirkpatrick, pursuant to H.R.S. 8, I inform the House that Ms. Kirkpatrick will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Donald Payne pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Payne will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Mullen of Oklahoma pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Mullen will vote no on the previous question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Wilson of South Carolina pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Wilson will vote nay on the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Liu pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Liu will vote yes on ordering the previous question. As the member designated by Mr. Lowenthal pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on ordering the previous question. And as the member designated by Mr. Allred pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Allred will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
for what purpose does the gentlewoman from Missouri seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Cortez will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Maxine Waters pursuant to House Rules Resolution 8, I inform the House that Ms. Maxine Waters will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on ordering the previous question.
On this vote, the yeas are 216, the nays are 204. The previous question.
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania votes no. Mr. Desjardins votes no. Mr. Graves of Louisiana votes no. Mr. Yarmouth votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 217, the nays are 208. The previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Ayes and nays.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Lowenthal pursuant to HRS 8, I inform the House Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on HRS 409. As a member designated by Mr. Liu pursuant to HRS 8, I inform the House Mr. Liu will vote yes on HRS 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Wilson of South Carolina pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Wilson will vote nay on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Maxine Waters pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Ms. Maxine Waters will vote yes on H Resolution 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Mullen of Oklahoma pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Mullen will vote nay on H.R. 409. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Sewell pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Sewell will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. McHenry of North Carolina pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. McHenry will vote no on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Designated by Ms. Wilson pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on H-Res 409. And as the member designated by Mr. Courtney pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Courtney will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Young of the great state of Alaska pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Young will vote nay on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As member designated by Representative Cardenas, pursuant to H.R. 8, I inform the House Representative Cardenas will vote aye on H.R. 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Buchanan of Florida, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Buchanan will vote no on House Resolution
For what purpose does
409.
the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Deutsch of Florida pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Deutsch will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
As a member designated by Ms. Joyce Beatty pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Beatty will vote yes on H.R. 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on H-Res 409. And as the member designated by Mr. Allred pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Mr. Allred will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Slotkin pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Slotkin will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Missouri seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Cortez will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Lawson, Florida, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Lawson votes yes on H.R. 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Designated by Ms. Kirkpatrick, pursuant to H-Res 8, I inform the House that Ms. Kirkpatrick will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from
So after. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition? Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona pursuant to H-Res 8, I hereby inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote yes on H-Res 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Carter of Texas, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Carter will vote no on HRES 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Rupersberger of Maryland pursuant to House Resolution 8, I rise to inform the House that Mr. Rupersberger will vote aye on HRES 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Congressmember Napolitano pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on HRS 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on HRES 409.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Rush pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on HRES 409.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Crenshaw of Texas, pursuant to HRES 8, I inform the House that Mr. Crenshaw will vote no on HRES 409.
On this vote, the yeas are 216, the nays are 208. The resolution is adopted without objection. The motion reconsidered is laid on the table. Good luck.